Ole Miss not going after this position in the transfer portal is at best weird.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, I'm Stephen Willis, a former staff member at Ole Miss and a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports. Today on the show, we talk about why Ole Miss is not looking at punters in the transfer portal when it was honestly the weakest portion of Lane Kiffin's team a year ago. Okay. Everybody insert Lane Kiffin jokes about punting right here. Now realize that hidden yardage will be a key factor in whether Ole Miss goes 9-3 or Ole Miss wins the title. Friend of the program, Max Chadwick, named Jaxson Dart as a dark horse to win the Heisman Trophy this year. And we talk about defensive backs post-spring as we continue to will the season to start. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the everydayers that make the show what it is. July 2nd, okay? We need to talk about July 2nd. July 2nd, we are going to do a meet and greet somewhere in the, the I-20 corridor around Jackson, Mississippi, probably Madison, Flowood, somewhere in there. We're going to hook up a meet and greet on July 2nd. The location and the time is to be determined, but be on the lookout for something around Madison or Flowood. And there's still time to join the Grove Collective and help Ole Miss football go to the top. You can go to thegrovecollective.com and join today. So we have a bunch of interesting stuff that we've gone over with the transfer portal over the last several weeks. We're about a month away from the beginning of the spring transfer portal window today. It opened on April 15th. It is May 14th. So we're about a month in at this point. So we have an idea of what is going on. And Ole Miss has added a couple of running backs, and Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, who graduated. He's going to grad transfer. Looks like his eligibility is going to be absolutely fine, so don't worry about him. Henry Parrish coming back as a grad transfer. One and done type players. Again, Ole Miss is not recruiting underclassmen necessarily at the running back position because they do not want to run off a Kylan Deere who has a chance to be a generational type talent at the running back position. They do not want to scare him off. And he's set to visit Florida around June 4th, that weekend. He'll be down in Gainesville. The reason I say around June 4th is my birthday. So that going on tells you Ole Miss has added running back positions. They've added defensive back players like Isaiah Hamilton, along with all of the DBs that they added in the winter transfer portal. Defensive line, they're working on maybe adding a Tyler Barrett. Linebacker, Khalil Jacobs, they're working on maybe adding him as well. There's adding to every room in the building with the exception of punter. They've even added to kicker rooms before whenever they added Caden Davis, and they ran off Caden Costa, but they added Caden Davis. Fraser Masin last season, he had 48 punts. He averaged a respectable 42.5 yards per kick. He had 15 kicks out of 48. About 1 in 3 was inside the 20-yard line. A lot of that had to do with where we were kicking from. But those were respectable numbers. But those don't represent what it was really like watching Ole Miss punt the football a year ago. There was a couple of games during the season that Ole Miss, for whatever reason, averaged 30 yards per punt, and it just didn't look consistent, and it didn't look right. And everybody was concerned about it. I guarantee you in the comments below, somebody's going to bring up the fact that, Ole Miss needs a punter because punting last year was not good. Those numbers tell a different story, but no, punting last year was not good. It was inconsistent at best. And with Ole Miss having a potentially great defense, On3 has done top 10 national rankings over the course of the last week or so. And in every one of those top 10 nationally. They did all the offensive position. They've done the defensive line position. Ole Miss was rated in the top 10 nationally in all of them. I don't think people realize how special this team could be. And the more special a team can be, the more important things like punting the football become. Punting the football is not important when you are a 5-6 team or a 5-7 team. It's not that important when you're an 8-4 team. It becomes important once you get 10-2 and beyond, because the difference between 9-3 and winning a title is hidden yardage. What kind of advantage can you create punting the football? How can you change field position? Whenever your defense is as good as it is, how can you back them up further and further and further until eventually the dam breaks and you score? You get a short field, you get a turnover, something happens. Alabama made a living doing that under Kirby, Smart, and Nick Saban. He never went for it on fourth down because he didn't have to, because analytically, it served the purpose for him not to go for it. Let other people make the mistakes. You want to see two examples of a school making this mistake of going for it and being too aggressive in that thing and playing into Nick Saban's hand? Look at Hugh Freeze in 2013, the year before they beat Alabama, to where they went for it 4 or 5 times against Alabama, didn't get any of them, ended up losing that game like 24-0, something like that. And then go forward to the Matt Corral Get Your Popcorn Ready game in Bryant-Denny Stadium. Lane Kiffin went for it, was aggressive. The game got out of hand early. Boom. The python, the anaconda, choked it out. Next season is going to be about hidden yardage, especially when you have somebody like Princely Amon-Mielen, especially when you have somebody like Walter Nolan, Pooh Paul, Jared Ivey, J.J. Pegues. You want those guys to have the most advantageous situations available. And that could be them getting the ball with the other team, getting it inside their own 5-yard line. We need to punt the ball effectively. I get that everybody's team never punt and all of this stuff that's absolutely crazy. But Ole Miss needs to win hidden yardage a year to this coming year. And Fraser Masin, he has all of the ability in the world. He can do it. In the last games against Mississippi State and Penn State, I think he punted the ball well enough to where he was a weapon. He kind of looked like what we were promised. He didn't look like what he looked like earlier in the year. So it's there. It's in there. The question is going to become, is his inconsistent games, if he's going to have them, is that going to happen against Furman, MTSU, Wake Forest, or is it going to happen against LSU, Oklahoma, and Georgia? That is the question. Because if Fraser Masin can be a weapon in the punt game to where if Ole Miss has a 4th and 15 from the 45-yard line, you can know you can send him out there and he is going to kill the ball sand wedge style inside the 5-yard line. With that defense and everything, that becomes a weapon. That becomes a championship formula. If you want to look at something that Ole Miss wins the championship with, this is more likely than anything else for it to happen. You talk about all of the offensive explosivity that could be a thing with Jaxson Dart, a potential Heisman Trophy candidate, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. When you talk about how explosive this defense can be with Princely Amon-Mielen, maybe even Tyler Barron or Khalil Jacobs, if they decide to come on over, but you have Pooh Paul, you have Walter Nolan, you have J.J. Pegues, you have Jared Ivey, you have Suntarine Perkins, you have T.J. Dudley, you have explosive weapons on defense. The explosive weapons are going to be more effective when the offense is starting inside their 5-yard lines as opposed to starting at the 20. Those 15 yards of field position, that's hidden yardage. You need to be able to take advantage of all this and play at a high level. I do think that I'm going to harp on these things like hidden yardage this year more than I have any other thing in recent memory, because now it matters. Now it's real. Hidden yardage is one of those things that you have to get to the point where it matters. Ole Miss had to get to 10-2 before we could start really worried about hitting yardage. Once you survive all of that, now you fine-tune these small things and you become a much better product because of these hidden yardage features. You look at these top 10 lists, it's undeniable how talented this Ole Miss football team is. It would be a shame to blow that in the punt game. And that surprises me that Ole Miss is not going after a punter in the transfer portal window. Maybe there's nobody available. Maybe they've looked at the film. Maybe whoever's responsible for grading them out, he's like, well, there's just nobody there. We're just going to have to make do. Maybe that's the story. Maybe Fraser Masin was just bombing the ball in the spring to where Lane Kiffin's like, yes, we have something there. But even then, who's going to be taking the range next year? The 2025 range. Interesting stuff. And I will see exactly how they do. But it's at least weird that Ole Miss is not going after a punter in the spring transfer portal window, especially with the importance that will be hidden yardage this season. So thank you very much for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen of the day. Max Chadwick from PFF is back in the business of making good football takes again. You know, when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find the quality professionals that are right for that role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn just isn't a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but they might be open for that perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking at LinkedIn, you're doing it wrong. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. 2.5 small businesses can't be wrong. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume with all of that screaming and shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming service program for you each and every single day to bring you the biggest stories without all of that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinion, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. All right, so really interesting stuff. I know it's a crazy thing in the middle of May. We did a segment 1 on punters. It's amazing. I am very fired up about that, and I'm so glad we could get that in there. I actually have a picture of me as a kicker, so I did that. That's the realm that I was in high school as well. So I enjoy special teams quite a bit. So Max Chadwick came out and had an interesting take. And first of all, we'll start off here. This is On3's 2024 College Heisman Trophy odds per Circa Sports. Carson Beck is plus 700. He's tied with Quinn Ewers. Third, fourth, and fifth is Garrett Nussmeier, Jaxson Dart, and Nico Iamaleava. And that's interesting because that's tied for third, essentially, on this list. And I think this is important for people to realize what's going on, okay? Because what I talk about in the next segment, and that is Max Chadwick, he said, if you want me to pick a dark horse for the Heisman Trophy, I think Jaxson Dart is a really good choice. Now, we all know that Max Chadwick is a Penn State guy. We all know that Max Chadwick watched that Peach Bowl. He saw Jaxson Dart surgically pick apart the number one defense in the entire country. So if you want to talk about a defense and that is a good competition fit to go against the Jaxson Dart that might have a chance to do well, that was one of them. But it didn't. There was no matchup. There was nobody on that defense that could cover Tre Harris. Nobody. Tre Harris is back for the next year. Juice Wells is going to be here next year. Jordan Watkins is going to be here next year. Ole Miss has a chance at wide receiver to be a better version of what they were a year ago. And this is even without Deion Smith, by the way. I'm not even incorporating him into my thoughts right now. I don't think that there's an issue with Deion Smith. I think he's going to be fine. He's going to be here, but he's not here yet. Let's talk about players that are here. Now, Juice Wells, he basically was shut down for the whole spring. He had surgery before spring practice, which, by the way, South Carolina, we talked about this. If he was faking it like you claim, he would not have needed surgery when he got to Ole Miss. It's more likely your people kind of botched that diagnosis. It happens. It's just one of those things. But Juice Wells is probably a plus version of Dayton Wade. I don't know that he is going to play on the outside. Jordan Watkins has experience playing on the outside. And Jordan Watkins is probably the most underrated player in the entire conference. Jaxson Dart having those three weapons with a Caden Prieskorn and a Daquan Wright, with the running backs that he has in Ja'Cory Crosskey-Merritt, Henry Parrish, Ulysses Bentley IV, with those guys, this offense has a chance to be 2022 Tennessee elite to the point where they're just scary offensively. And here's the part that everybody should get really nervous about. The defense is going to be better. This isn't 2017 and 2018 with Wesley McGriff calling the defense, where you're giving up 34 points and you're like, hey, we played pretty well that day. We only gave up 34 to Texas A&M or whatever. No. This is a defensive unit that'll probably give up somewhere in the ballpark of 14 to 20 points a game. That's just the way that they're going to function. So if you want to take an explosive offense under Jaxson Dart that has a chance to score a ton of points, there's going to be a large spread in most games. There's going to be some close ones, but there's going to be a spread in most games. And you can see how Jaxson Dart might make the podium. When you look at what he did a year ago, 233 for 358, 3,364 yards, 23 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. This season, Jaxson Dart, we talked about this during the top fives last week with just about everybody. Jaxson Dart has a chance to own every meaningful record in Ole Miss as a quarterback, with the exception of maybe passing touchdowns. That could be the thing that he allows Eli Manning to keep. He needs like 3,500 yards to break the passing record. He's going to break the rushing yard record if he hasn't already. He may have broken that already. Completion percentage, he's going to be fine. Pass efficiency is going to be well up there as well. He's just going to work and work and work. And whenever you look at the end of the day, he's going to end up with like 30 all-time wins, which for an Ole Miss quarterback is going to break the record that previously stood by about 10. When you look at the other quarterbacks that went before Jaxson Dart, for various reasons, nobody's close record-wise to what he's going to put up. So, yes, I can understand Max Chadwick saying, hey, this is a dark horse pick for the Heisman Trophy. And it is a dark horse pick for the Heisman Trophy. And if he does the things that I expect him to do, I don't know if it's just Heisman Trophy. I think it's first pick in the draft. I think it's all of this stuff. If Jaden Daniels made a jump, we had Mike Detillier on the show about 2 or 3 months ago. And Mike Detillier, he's a WWL New Orleans stalwart. He is a person that does LSU pregame shows. He is an NFL draft guru. He follows the Saints and all of that. He said before we knew anything about any of this is he was glad that Jaxson Dart came back, because Jaxson Dart needed this year, not because he needed to necessarily get better this year. No, This could be a Jaden Daniels type year for Jaxson Dart. Listen to me when I say that. This could be a Jaden Daniels type year for Jaxson Dart. This could be a Jaden Daniels type year for Jaxson Dart with touchdown passes, rushing, all of that stuff. Different type players. He's not as fast as Jaden Daniels, but he could be as effective. And that's what Mike Detillier was talking about, was how effective that Jaxson Dart could be in a year 3 system in a Lane Kiffin offense. And add into the fact, this is the cheat code that I don't think anybody is taking into account. Ole Miss is going to have a speaker in the helmet that is going to remain on until the play clock gets to 15 seconds. Ole Miss usually snaps the ball at about 20. Okay? They're pretty quick to do that. But that means the speaker is going to be on until the snap. So Lane Kiffin is going to be able to look over everything, see if he's got the coverage that he thinks he has, and just flat out say, hey, look at Jordan this play. Look at Trey this play. Trey has one-on-one. All of these notes that happen because the play has already been called and they're at the line of scrimmage, it's all good to go. Lane Kiffin is known for his whistling when he sees something has worked to get the quarterback's attention, so he hits it. Now Lane Kiffin just has to tell him. Jaxson Dart will be a cheat code, an absolute cheat code, if this goes the way I think it's going to go. And we'll see exactly how it goes. I'm pretty fired up right now, obviously. You can tell by the tone of my voice. So, thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen of the day. Ole Miss football's defensive back room has been built very well. We let you know who the names to know are. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available in the free Fire TV channels app. Be part of history. All right, so interesting stuff. We're doing our post-spring look at different position groups, and now we've gotten to the position that over the course of this transfer portal season, you take them and the running back room, and Lane Kiffin has probably added as much as he did to the quarterback room a year ago. And Lane has added defensive backs, or should I say Pete Golding has added defensive backs. Now, when you look at the starting line of this, is Tre Amos. Tre Amos is famous for in spring practice lining up against Tre Harris and them having the must-see television type one-on-one matchups between Tre Amos and Tre Harris. That was the matchup that everybody cared about. Ole Miss had a little bit of an issue at the other corner. Now, they had Chris Graves. They have Cedric Beavers. There's players on that side of the ball. They brought in a Morian Walker who it just didn't work out. He couldn't break into the two deep, and because of that, he went back to Michigan. So Ole Miss replaced that depth of a defensive back with another defensive back in Isaiah Hamilton. This was a do-everything guy at the University of Houston. Played like 750 snaps, had 50 tackles a year ago, 4 picks, 4 passes defended, worked in the return game. He is a very much sorely going to be missed athlete by Houston fans. If you look at Parker Ainsworth on Twitter and all that, he is very upset that Isaiah Hamilton is leaving Houston, but he's going to walk on Ole Miss's campus and immediately be the second defensive back. And then you have Chris Graves, you have Cedric Beavers that have a little bit of eligibility, who's going to be slated to move into next year's unit. But in this modern college football, it's not a starting 11, it's a starting 22, but it kind of is what it is. Lewis Moore is a guy that I think has a chance to be special. He is somebody that you haven't really heard of, but if you're looking for that Dejon Anthony type player that kind of comes out of nowhere, There's two players right now that comes to mind that Ole Miss fans need to watch out for, and one of which is Lewis Moore. The other one that Ole Miss fans probably need to watch out for is this one, and that's Jaden Canady. And another one is Yam Banks as well. So that's three players, not two. One of those players could be the player that turns around everything. Jaden Canady had a major knee injury 2 years ago. Didn't play much last year. This year, he is going to be a dude in that defense. He just is. And then there's Yam Banks, who also is another guy. He is known for, when he was at USA at South Alabama, they were playing against Georgia Southern. And he was sick. Their flu bug went around, whatever. He was sick. At the very last second, he went all out and he said, I am going to go to this game. I am going to be here. He forced himself up, went to the airport, flew out of his own accord to Statesboro, Georgia. He was picked up at the airport. He had a pick. The defense won the game that night. And it was largely because of the effort of Yam Banks. Good player that if you want a G5 player that surprises, yeah, I would look at Yam Banks to be that guy. And then you have the returners. Like John Saunders, who played that husky type fifth defensive back role. He had 65 tackles, 3 picks, 4 passes defended. He was a good player. Pete Golding is a person that if you're going to play on the outside, you've got to have elite level man coverage skills. He learned that from Nick Saban. He brought that to here, and that is what you see on the outside. If you don't, you get moved to the inside, and you're playing slot corner and things like that. So it's something to watch with a Yam Banks, a John Saunders, with a Jaden Canady, all of which have played corner on the outside at the G5 level, but at the Power 5 level are probably going to be playing on the inside for the Rebels. And then you have Trey Washington, who quietly has become a little bit of an alpha dog for Ole Miss defensively. Last year, he had 83 tackles, 3 picks, 2 passes defended. He replaced A.J. Finley, and I didn't know that replacing somebody like A.J. Finley was really in the cards. Trey Washington not only did that, but did it in spades a little bit. He really, really made it to the point where you just did not miss A.J. Finley. It absolutely fantastic play. Now, players that they are actively looking in the transfer portal. We talked yesterday about Khalil Jacobs. We talked about how Tyler Barron is still out there as well. And we'll see exactly how that goes. Good players. All of which good players. And we talked in the first segment why it's just at least a little bit weird that Ole Miss has not gone after a transfer portal punter. Because I put up the stats of Fraser Masin. I'll put those up right now again. 48, 42.5, and 15. Those aren't bad numbers. If you look at those numbers, you're like, okay, yeah, he was pretty good. He was a good player. Ole Miss did not punt the ball very well a year ago. They had a couple of games where they punted it very good, but they had a couple of games where they punted it very poorly. So we'll see exactly how that goes as well. Hey, it's May 14th. We are trying to will ourselves to media days at the least. We're probably about 60 days away from media days. Pretty fired up about that. Should be a lot of fun. Jaxson Dart is probably going to be the face, which he should have been the face a year ago, by the way. I understand taking Quinshawn and all of that, but Jaxson Dart should have been the face, and especially with the year that he ended up having. So I'm glad that Jaxson is going to get the accolades and plaudits of actually going there and being kind of the face of the program. Him and JJ Pegues and probably Chris Paul or somebody like Tre Harris or somebody like that going to SEC media days. Should be a lot of fun. Should be a lot of fun indeed. Thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen. We have the most perspective surrounding Ole Miss sports, and it's one of the many reasons why we are the #1 Ole Miss podcast out there, and thank you for that. This week's top 5 topic will be the top Egg Bowl games/moments. But for your second listen, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV Channels app. And for those of you on YouTube, We'll send you there right now. Howdy toddy, everyone.